for sustainable development. I'm not very sure about whether the word sustainable development has been explained in detail or not. So let me have some thought over that. So as one of the definition goes, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations. I've added this word aspiring population to meet their own needs, right? So you don't just think about present generation or yourself, but think about the your children, grandchildren, grandchildren, and whatever is the foreseeable future. One needs to have that kind of vision, or at least the policymakers or the decision makers should have that kind of vision. Uh, but even when you think about the present, there is a large population which is still not getting the fruits of so-called development. So even in present, a very small population utilize a very big chunk of natural resources. So there should be less disparity in distribution. As you can see from this pyramid, uh, around 68.7% of the people in the world utilize only 3% of the have only 3% of the wealth. While if you see the top part, you see that point like uh, 41% wealth is utilized by 0.7% of people, right? So this kind it's about thinking about the future needs as well as thinking about need of everybody. Okay, that's what I believe should be thought over when you think about the sustainable development. So when you think about the needs, what are the needs? Physical needs, food, cloth, shelter. If you go at a higher level, then nutritious and healthy food, fashionable clothes, shelter, that is your building equipped with facilities to provide comfort, and other needs, entertainment, mobility, aesthetics, social status, etc. It seems that at mental level, there is no limit to the needs of a human being. As per the famous quote by Gandhiji, that there is enough for everybody's need, but not for anybody's greed. Right? But so this word need is a very debatable word. What is the basic need, and what are the where is the limit to the end of the need? Uh, Okay, so there has to be a rational thinking about satisfying the needs. Now, where does this need for air conditioning or HVAC system come from? Uh, so perhaps it's more of urban or modern phenomena, and basically it comes from the need for thermal comfort and healthy indoor environment. Right, so that's about uh, changing the environment around you rather than you can't control the weather, so you have to control the weather around or conditions of air around you or the environmental conditions around you. That's what about the air conditioning. Yeah. So sustainable development in the field of air conditioning, there are certain questions to ponder upon in this. Whether most, and why not all, people have access to healthy and comfortable indoor conditions? What is the effect of large scale use of ACs on energy consumption versus the availability of energy scenario? So use of large resources for AC, and that too for a few people, is it justified? What is the effect of large scale use of ACs on environment? Right, we already have concerns about the greenhouse gas emission, global warming, and pollution related concerns. Whether the industry should continue using conventional technology or upgrade it or diversify it or adopt completely different path for the sustainable growth. Okay, so The conventional technology, everybody, I believe, here is familiar with the conventional vapor compression refrigeration system, which is the most dominant system. Many times it is kind of synonym when you talk about refrigeration and air conditioning. Uh, Almost all the time you are talking about the vapor compression refrigeration system, and the various component standard components of that and the system, etc., is already known to us, and the cycle is also known. So there is a reason why it is the most dominant. So it's having a very high COP. It has the technology has nearly matured, and it's compact, and the cost per ton of refrigeration, as it is a mass produced system now. The package units have very low cost per ton of refrigeration as compared to many other new and tailor-made technologies for air conditioning. But then why this rethinking? There are certain limitations which are realized now, and one of them is that it needs only high grade of energy, that is electrical, and in some cases it can run with mechanical energy. And this electrical energy still, a large part of it comes from the central power plants which produce different kind of pollutants. Again, the refrigerants used in these kind of systems are ozone depleting, or they produce global warming. Ozone depletion is now almost addressed, but global warming produced by these refrigerants is still a big concern. So there is a need for rethinking and replanning of the systems that can deliver air conditioning. Now, when you talk about the development, this air conditioning industry is developing by leaps and bounds for last decade or so. So, like everything in this market, seem to be very goody-goody, and the growth predicted is very good. So that's a positive thing, like the industry growing, the GDP growing, and also people getting more employment in this field, and many the well-being, the wealth of many people related with the development of this industry. That is a good part of this. And the further development scenario predicted is also very good, very high growth expected in different countries, particularly in developing countries like India, and China is already there, and Indonesia, Mexico, Brazil, etc. So by 2050, around two-thirds of the world's households could have an air conditioner, and China, India, and Indonesia will together account for half the total number. But then there is another part which needs to be addressed. Otherwise, the growth or the development cannot be sustainable, and that is the energy consumption because of the air conditioning. So air conditioning use emerges as one of the key drivers of global electricity demand growth. And this is the statement by the chief of IEA, that is International Energy Agency, that without new efficiency standards, the world will be facing a cold crunch from growth in cooling demand in coming decades. Right. So there is in Indian epics, there is a story of Manu Rishi. So there was a fish in a small ball, and then it grew, so it had to be put in a well. It grew further, so it had to be put in a pond. It grew further, so it had to be put in a river, and then finally in the sea. Right. But this fish is going on growing. Uh, but let's say you don't have a river or a sea, so it has to, if it is goes on growing and goes on increasing its needs, and if it is confined to a pond, then the pond may not be sufficient to provide all its needs. So in that case, it will die, right? So the growth has to be such that it is possible to sustain it for a uh, like foreseeable future. So what is the present condition, and what is the prediction for the coming future tomorrow? So what you see here in this graph, these green columns, this is the percentage of households that have ECs today in different countries. So you can see Japan and USA and Korea having almost exceeding 80%, going up to even more than that, perhaps 90%. So, but many other countries in the developing world which have higher population have a very small penetration of air conditioners. So in future, they will also strive to have the air conditioners, and the growth is expected from there. But along with that, the global energy demand will also rise. So let's watch a video which tells you what needs uh, to be done for making this growth sustainable. Yes, so a very important thing for sustainable growth is increasing the energy efficiency of air conditioners. And there are different technologies available now with the help of which this can be achieved. Many of the air conditioners already available in market have very high EERs or SEER, for Indian condition ISEER. So the consumers needs to switch to the highly efficient air conditioning technologies. The other aspect to it is explained in this video.
We face a vicious cycle. As the world warms, demand for refrigeration, air conditioning, and fans rises. So do carbon emissions, making the world hotter still. Left unchecked, emissions from cooling will double by 2030. Do nothing, the number of us exposed to deadly heat will more than double. And the poor will suffer most. With proper cold storage and refrigerated transport, we could deliver the vaccines that prevent 1.5 million deaths a year, and reduce food waste, and boost economic growth by reducing the working hours lost due to heat. To meet the challenge of sustainable, efficient cooling for all, we need to increase the thermal efficiency of buildings, improve urban planning and the use of green spaces in cities, set temperature limits in buildings, and have government regulations and policies that help to reduce the cooling demand. With the best ideas, bold policies, and smart investments, we can deliver sustainable cooling for all. Solutions start today.
So sustainable cooling for all, that should be the goal. So so it's not just increasing the efficiency of the air conditioning or refrigeration system, also increasing the energy efficiency of the buildings. As you will see later, that the very high percentage of demand for cooling is going to come from the buildings, even compared to other refrigeration demands. So one of the remedies is to set higher temperature limits for ACs. Right? As you already know that the default temperature in the new ACs in India is going to be 24 degrees Celsius. Right? And in this video, if you observed it properly, it was shown 26 degrees Celsius. So the world is already talking about much higher temperatures, and the temperature default temperatures in Japan, it has to be set at 28 degrees Celsius. Right, so you have to be rational about your needs, so that we continue with the development, and the fruit of the development is available to all throughout the population. Yes. So the demand for cooling today and tomorrow. So you can see here that in the baseline scenario, which is 2017 and 18, right? The demand for demand for cooling in total, right? A part of it is air conditioning. So different segments from where the need for cooling is coming is shown with different colors. So even in 2017-18, 57% of the cooling demand came from space cooling in buildings, and then refrigeration 20%, 23%, transport air conditioning, and a very small part of it, hardly visible, from cold chain. Okay, and 2022-23 scenario, the like demand from the buildings is 62%, 27-28 it is 68, and 37-38 it is 74. So the absolute demand as well as percentage demand from space cooling in building is going on rising. So this is a good news for the air conditioning system, but then there are certain issues which have to be addressed. So as shown here, building cooling demand is projected to grow around 11 times as compared to the baseline scenario of 2017-18. If you think about 2037-38, it will become 11 times. So this seems to be almost indigestible. And if you have to sustain this growth, you have to focus upon the energy, or you have to reduce the energy demand, or you have to increase the kilowatt consumption per ton of refrigeration. And so that's one of the important things to be addressed, and also address the environmental concerns. So here, the million tons of oil equivalent, right? The energy consumption by different applications in cooling is shown. And this baseline scenario again is 2017-18, where 60% of is coming from the space cooling in buildings. So this much energy, one of the ways of expressing the unit of energy is million tons of oil equivalent. So that is shown here, and even 17-18, 60% is coming from the space cooling industry, and 37-38 it may reach up to 59%, which is almost 150 million tons of oil equivalent. Right, but this can be reduced as shown by those hazy columns. This can be reduced if an intervention is done. That is, you change your normal course and adopt all required steps to reduce the energy demand from air conditioning. You are not compromising with your tons of refrigeration, but you are trying all different required steps to reduce the kilowatt per ton of refrigeration demand. So total cooling energy demand expected to grow by 4.5 times the baseline scenario. So one of the concerns related to the use of energy is the greenhouse gas emission and other pollution related concerns. So the electricity demand for air conditioning, it is needed that we invest more for the more efficient ACs. This will cut down the future energy demand by half. Our efficient cooling scenario shows that effective policies can double average AC efficiency and reduce cooling energy demand by 45% compared to the reference scenario. Okay, so the energy demand for the energy demand in terawatt hour is shown here, and by 2050 it can reach up to around 6,000 terawatt hour due to space cooling. But if required energy efficiency measures are taken, then it can be limited to 3,407 terawatt hour. Right? So this explains the need to adopt highly efficient technologies for air conditioning for the sustainable growth. Right. And regarding the CO2 emissions, if required measures are not taken, then this is metric ton of million tons of CO2. This is what is generated because of the space cooling, and in 2016 and 2050 it can cross 2000, but this can be reduced if required measures are taken, efficiency related measures. That is one thing, and then reducing the carbon emission from the power plant, if required measures are done, then you have a optimistic scenario for 2050. Right. So the remedies is encourage alternative cooling solutions, reduce the impact of rising space cooling demand by supporting building envelope technologies. That is reducing the energy demand in the buildings. Okay. And our focus here is reducing the demand for air conditioning in buildings. Increase air conditioning energy performance, right? Energy efficient AC units can dampen the impact of rapidly growing cooling demand. Okay. And greater effort is needed to expand and strengthen MEPS with targets and requirements that progressively move AC energy performance towards the current best available technology level. Right? So whatever is best available in market should be adopted. And again, there is a need for continual improvement also. Also make AC systems and also the people using ACs smarter and more flexible, and develop renewable energy cooling solutions. So we will see about these steps in different parts of this lecture. So high efficiency AC plants needs to be adopted, implemented, because around 45% of the energy demand, let's say in an office building, can come from air conditioning systems. So use of more energy efficient systems like VRF systems. If chiller plant is used, then high delta T chilled water systems and other technological advances like magnetic bearing, variable speed drive compressors, more efficient designs of the heat exchanger, the evaporator in particular. Some efforts to reduce this energy consumption in chilling plants are also enlisted here. That's about the optimum selection and combination, and also like having overall view of the system rather than the individual best efficiency of this of different parts of the system. Then develop renewable cooling solutions. Renewable energy source like solar photovoltaic and storage in the form of ice makers. So you can make it during off-peak hours and can be utilized during the peak hours, and reducing the cost of solar thermal cooling. So storage is also an important part, and adopting certain technologies which have lower demand for electrical power. And the temperature of the solar cell thermal system depends on the system composition, ranging from 40 to 70 for flat plate collector, and with desiccant cooling, desiccant evaporative cooling, and to 50 degrees Celsius for Fresnel lens based absorption chiller. So there are different technologies, and the firing temperatures are different for different technologies. We'll see that in detail later. So one of the technologies proposed which is considered to be more energy efficient is radiant cooling, right? It may be combined with displacement ventilation or underfloor distribution system, air distribution system. Okay, so the radiative heat exchange, the conventional cooling that is provided is mainly by mode of convection. That is, the air is forced into the conditioned space, and let's say it's for human comfort. Then we also have the breeze of air passing over our body, and that's how our body also gets cooled, and the other objects in the conditioned space also get cooled. But in place of that, if the radiative mode of heat exchange is made more dominant, then it has certain advantages like more uniform cooling and need for the temperatures can be higher, right? The cooling water that you pass through the chilled beams or chilled ceilings, that temperature can be much higher as compared to the conventional system, which use air as the cooling media, air thrown into the conditioned space as cooling media. So that water temperature can be much higher. Rather, it has to be actually most of the times higher than the dew point temperature of the temperature of the conditioned space. So because you don't want moisture to get formed on its surfaces. So the chiller plants obviously can give you much higher COPs because the evaporator temperature is higher, and that's how it makes it more energy efficient. And here generally you have to take care of the latent load separately by mode of by way of supplying fresh air or outdoor air with required low humidity, so that it also takes care of the latent load inside the conditioned space. The exchange processes and the flow pattern of air is shown in this figure. So the sensible cooling is provided with this cooled ceiling, which is the heat sink, while the latent cooling is provided by the air that is being supplied here, and it provides required cooling, particularly latent cooling, and as it gets heated up, it rises up and takes the pollutants also along with it, and it is taken out from the exhaust here. And the cooling process of the subject as well as the other entities inside this conditioned space is also shown. The other heat exchange processes are also illustrated in this figure. And here is the scheme this is the water chilling plant and the coils which are embedded into the floor or ceiling, which has lower temperature, which reduces the temperature of the ceiling, and by mode of radiation it cools the other entities in the conditioned space. So the possible advantages in radiant cooling systems, and it is many times combined with because radiant cooling cannot provide you the outdoor air or fresh air, which is required for keeping the pollutant content inside the room in check. You have to keep it to a you can't allow it to exceed certain level, the pollutants in the conditioned space. So you have to take the air from outside, and you may filter it and clean it and then supply it into the conditioned space. So a unit which is dedicated for that purpose, supplying the outdoor air, is dedicated outdoor air supply unit or system. Okay. So here the possible advantage is, so this takes care of the latent load, because radiant cooling generally does not take care of the latent load. Combining these two could have advantages like higher cooling water temperature, right? In the radiant cooling system used, so better COP of the chilling plant, water chilling plant. Then when higher temperature could be somewhere around 12 to 15 degree Celsius. So such a higher temperature, the systems like vapor absorption and vapor adsorption can be used because they are not very good at delivering very low temperatures. Otherwise, they will deliver very low COPs. Okay, so now you have opened the option for using the other alternative air conditioning systems like vapor absorption and adsorption, and they need less electrical power, and they mainly run on the heat, right, which can come from let's say solar energy, or it can come from waste heat, and so that option is open, and then like other options like groundwater or cooling tower water can also be used uh, for cooling in the radiant systems, right? But of course they have a limitation, and generally I have not heard of the system like in a commercial building on trial basis or demonstration building basis, these things are done. But in commercial buildings, they have to generally go for a water chilling plant, but then your chilled water temperature could be lower, so that gives you an advantage on about COP. Yes. So here moisture removal should be done independently using dedicated outdoor air systems, and now in this system also there would be options of one of the important part of this is providing latent cooling or moisture removal from the outdoor air. So a desiccant system can be used for that purpose, and it also employs enthalpy wheels and sensible heat exchange wheels. And because of this, you are able to recover the cold. Otherwise, that would get exhausted, unutilized in the to the atmosphere. So radiant cooling, again, other possible advantages: no air drafts and uniform cooling, smaller ducts, because you are supplying very limited air for providing fresh air only. So the ducts could be smaller, and the fan power due to that would be smaller. And thermal mass of the ceiling can be used to pre-cool in off-peak hours for lower energy rates. So energy storage is also one of the possible advantages of this kind of system. Right. And one such system has been implemented in the Infosys building in Hyderabad, and they have two like symmetric divisions of the building, and one of it is cooled with conventional, but it is conventional but highly efficient, like conventional system of air conditioning. And the other one, the radiant cooling is implemented, and like when the building is being built, this is how the lines for the cooling water are laid in the flooring, that is shown here. And it is seen from this chart that the old AC design would consume much higher energy units per employee. Okay. Uh, while the new AC design, though this is conventional, it is highly efficient, and it consumes almost half of this, right? And the radiant cooling consumes even less than that. Right, so it has been demonstrated that radiant cooling system is much more energy efficient as compared to the other technologies. Right, and also it was shown that it provides you better thermal comfort. That is seen with the help of this graph. And here the energy consumption by conventional and the radiant cooling is shown with time. So I mentioned the word dedicated outdoor air systems. So what exactly is that? How does it? How is it different from the conventional system which takes outdoor air? Now, outdoor air always has to be taken from the atmosphere. Now, in this scenario of COVID-19 pandemic, we very well understand the need for ventilation, the need for taking outside air and diluting the conditioned space air with the help of that, right? So that the pollutants generated here are regularly exhausted out. So here in the conventional system, what is many times done is you want to take some fresh air, outside air, to be supplied into the conditioned space, and this is the return air coming from the conditioned space. Now the space is maintained at lower temperature and lower humidity levels, so the air here has very low enthalpy. But then you have to when you're taking a fresh air, you have to exhaust equivalent amount of air. As it is shown here, this is having low enthalpy, and you are just exhausting it. So that's a waste. That is the energy that you utilized for cooling this air. It's going out, and so that energy is getting wasted. There is some recirculated air. Here it is shown that 20% is exhausted, so 20 is fresh and or outdoor, and 80% is recirculated, and you are mixing them in the mixing chamber. And then this is the conventional air conditioning system, and here latent and sensible cooling is done with the help of the conventional air conditioning system. And it is shown then that sometimes when your SHR is low at that time, to remove moisture, you may have to overcool the air here, so that you are able to take out required amount of moisture. But then the temperature may become too low in doing that, so you may have to reheat it so that it doesn't go to a very low temperature, and it is at a temperature where you can supply it into the conditioned space. Right. So this is one possible disadvantage. Of course, this is like a very irrational waste of energy, and hardly utilized here. Only for very precise control, this might be needed. Okay. And as compared to that, if you utilize or adopt a dedicated outdoor air system, what will be the scheme? The scheme will be like this. This is the return air, and you are exhausting it here, and like this is the recirculated part, and this recirculated part you are cooling it with the conventional system, but the outdoor air that you are taking here is the latent, mainly latent cooling is done here, right? There would be there could be some sensible cooling also, but mainly it is taking care of the latent cooling, that is removal of moisture, and you will remove moisture to a level where it can also take care of the latent load in the space, not just the latent load of the outdoor air, but also that of the conditioned space, and then you mix it and supply it. So this is a dedicated outdoor air systems. Now here there is no interaction shown between this air exhausted and the outdoor air conditioning system, but there could be and there would be the interaction of these two also, as you will see later. So why is it good to have a dedicated outdoor air system? One of them is the increased more awareness about the indoor air quality. So the humidity levels and the fresh air requirement. So many times this fresh air requirement was overlooked for conserving energy, because if you take air from outside which is having very high enthalpy, your system will have to uh, do the required higher amount of cooling, and because of that the energy consumption will be much higher. So this part was many times overlooked, and but in the current scenario as well as even before that, people had slowly started realizing that if you don't take like enough outside air, and now you are also talking about treated outside air. So if you don't do that, then you are creating unhealthy environment in the conditioned space. So if you are particular about taking required amount of outdoor air, then it's going to increase your electricity bill, and you have to adopt the required measures to reduce that energy consumption. So and again, what is happening is over a period of time, as we improve the building envelope and reduce the penetration of heat into the buildings, the sensible heat ratio value that would go on decreasing. It means that the latent heat portion, latent heat removal, or the ratio is becoming higher, and because of that, you have to address it separately, the humidity part. Okay. Yeah. So the outdoor air system, dedicated outdoor air system, can have this kind of scheme where there is interaction between the return air and the outside air, as you can see here. So what might be done is, because this return air is having low enthalpy, you would like to reduce the enthalpy of the outdoor air with the help of that. So first, evaporative cooling may be done, and so the temperature goes down. Evaporative cooling can be done here because the return air has low RH, right? You are maintaining it generally in the range of 40 to 60%. So the evaporative cooler, you can produce further lower temperature. So this air is having lower temperature, while the outdoor air is having higher temperature. Right? If you just consider some numbers, the return air, let's say, is at 27 degrees Celsius and 50% RH, while the outside condition could be, let's say, 40 degrees Celsius and 20% RH or something. Right? So here you are cooling it, okay, and now it has more potential for cooling. So you use the heat recovery wheel. Right? So this wheel is having some matrix material which is getting cooled here, and then it is delivering cooling here. It slowly rotates and goes in the the opposite path of air. Right? Now, this air can be like it can be heated. It would heated, and you are using it in a desiccant wheel, and here you are removing the moisture from air. So this wheel contains the desiccant material and because of that the moisture from outside air is absorbed here, and when it absorbs moisture here, it will become saturated, and the moisture has to be removed in this portion when it is continuously rotating. So here you are heating this air, and you are removing that moisture from this wheel, and then the air is exhausted. Okay, so once this gets regenerated, as it is called, it goes into the other part, and it has capability to remove moisture from here. So you're removing moisture from the outside air here and also cooling that air, and now it is supplied into the room to take care of either it reduces the enthalpy so that the conventional system has to take away less enthalpy, or if you dehumidify it to the required level, it can even take care of the latent load in the space. Okay. So this is energy recovery using the dedicated outdoor air system. Okay. And then we are actually jumping to one of the trying to utilize the renewable energy source for air conditioning. Right? So one of the rationale for that is that India is blessed with a very high amount of solar energy availability, as it is shown here, 5 to 7 kilowatt hour per meter square in a day, a large part of it. And there are advantages that it is locally available, and one can utilize solar thermal collectors which have high conversion efficiencies, and for heating and cooling applications, though for power generation I'm not very much convinced that the solar thermal collector should be used. Solar PV seems to be performing very well. But for cooling and heating applications, the solar thermal collectors should be and can be used. Okay. So here just some explanation is given about utilizing solar PV for cooling, or utilizing the solar thermal collectors for cooling application. It has been shown. Of course, the figures you cannot adopt it's not a stagnant thing, it's a very dynamic thing, and things keep on changing. But thermodynamically also it seems convincing that for cooling and heating application you adopt solar thermal collectors. Right, so adopting solar thermal collectors, and then you have heat available, and then using thermal cooling process. Okay, so different kind of cooling system, vapor adsorption, desiccant cooling. So those kind of systems can be used, and then the cold can be delivered into the building. So what are the different types of solar thermal collectors available? The flat plate collector or evacuated tube collector. Again, you can have direct flow and heat pipe in this ETC. Concentrating collectors. So when you want higher temperatures, one should go for concentrating collectors. If low temperatures are good enough for you, you should not adopt concentrating collectors because they are costlier, they are more complex to operate. Right, so the concentrating collectors, CPC, parabolic dish, parabolic trough, solar tower, and again different systems in parabolic trough, different technologies also. So this is showing a solar flat plate collector, right? But an improved one, higher efficiency one as compared to the regular solar water heater. because for firing your air conditioning system here, firing your air conditioning systems, you need generally higher temperatures. Okay, so if the operating temperatures are a bit high, in that case, one should go for, even if you're using a flat plate collector, it should be of a better quality, as it is shown here. Like you can have anti-reflective coating on the surface, or on the glazing, right? So that can provide you higher efficiency even at higher operating temperatures, as shown here. If you don't adopt uh, uh, those better quality components, then the efficiency would be lower. Okay. So other collectors like CPSC collectors and the heat pipe based collectors.
Thanks, Pa.
That's it. Yes, somebody is unmuted. Please make sure that you are muted. So one of the options is CPC based collectors and the heat pipe based collectors. Okay, some technological details of the evacuated tube collectors is also shown here. The heat pipe based collector, the fins and the heat pipes, the manifold, etc. Not going into details of that. If you want higher temperatures for your for firing your air conditioning systems, then you may go for the concentrating type of collectors, which can give you higher temperatures. So what are the cooling technologies? One is the thermally driven, other is electricity driven. And in thermally driven, you can have open cycle or closed cycle. In open cycle, liquid desiccant system, solid desiccant system, closed cycle, absorption, adsorption, radiation cooling system, thermomechanical is steam ejector system, right? So here some comparison about different types of thermally driven cooling technologies is given. When you're talking about the closed cycle, this is adsorption and this is absorption. So adsorption, one of the options is water silica gel, and the typical COP that you can expect. So COPs are somewhat lower, but the driving temperatures are also lower. So this is actually if you talk about this part, the water lithium bromide or ammonia water. So the COPs given here are for single effect, right? Like in what sizes they are generally available commercially. So what you see is that the absorption systems, they are not available in very small sizes, right? Small sizes, it is generally not viable because you have to maintain very high level of vacuum in such systems, or if it is ammonia water, then it's a pressurized system, right? So the COP is given, and what are the driving temperatures required in such systems. This is only for single stage. You need this temperature, right? If you want to go for double effect or even triple effect available now, then the temperatures required would be much higher. And in the open cycle systems, you can either adopt the desiccant cooling, solid desiccant or liquid desiccant. But actually, solid desiccant and liquid desiccant systems are mainly for latent load removal. You can convert a part of it into sensible cooling, and you can utilize other type of sinks for removal of sensible heat that needs to be combined with this, but they are mainly for the purpose of latent heat removal. You have to combine other source, or rather sink, to take away the sensible portion of the heat. Okay. So this is giving an overall system for vapor absorption refrigeration system combined with the solar collector. So solar collector, then storage tank, then different components of the absorption machine, and the cooling tower required for cooling the providing cooling in the condenser, the chilled water generated here, and there could be storage of that, and you may have to combine it with the regular compression system, right? So for further cooling, and then this is the cooling loop. Okay. So the vapor absorption machines, if you go for single effect, you need lower temperatures from your solar collector, but then the COP will also be low, right? Heat supply temperature as it is shown here. So if you are utilizing more economical solar collectors, which can provide you not very high temperatures, then you have to be satisfied with the lower COPs provided by the single effect, right? If you are going for more costly concentrating collectors, then you may go for a double effect, which can deliver you higher COPs. And the next stage is triple effect. So this graph also explains that fact that if you want higher COPs, you have to adopt this area, but in that the efficiencies, either you have to go for better quality solar collector, which would be costlier, or you have to be satisfied with lower efficiency at higher temperatures, right? So there are two considerations. One, whether you want to go for higher COP of the cooling plant, or you want to go for economical collector, or there has to be a good combination of these two criteria. So absorption machines, as you can see here, single effect and double effect is compared. So driving temperature for single effect could be 80 to 110, while for double effect it would be 140 to 160. So here you can use hot water or steam. Here you have to use pressurized steam. Okay. Here higher temperatures are required, so the solar collector initial cost will be higher. Okay. So this is the comparison, and based on this you have to take a decision whether you want, which type of collector you want to use, and which type of cooling system you want to use. Okay. There has been efforts to make smaller systems, right, but generally very costly, and so not much visible in the market, right? So one important thing that I would like draw your attention to is you can see here there are two applications of this unit shown. One is cooling ceiling, that is chilled ceiling or radiant cooling, and another is fan coils, the conventional unit, right? So if you want this much amount of cooling, what you see here is temperature in out, right? So you need higher temperatures for the chilled ceiling type of application, while for the fan coils it is lower temperatures. Now when this is lower, what you find is that your hot water cycle, the hot water that you need to supply for this, you can see that for this application you need higher temperature of hot water, okay? While here the temperature range is lower. Okay. So when you want cooling at lower temperature, you also need to provide the heat at higher temperatures. Otherwise, your COP will go down. Right? Other smaller systems also shown. This is explaining the liquid desiccant or in general the desiccant based cooling systems, right? So there are two parts of it. One part is like the dehumidification with the help of desiccant done here, and then some sensible cooling required, some other media required for that. And then if it is dehumidified here to the required extent, and this is the sensible cooling provided here, then if you want further lower temperatures, you may go for evaporative cooling as it is shown here. And then once this desiccant is saturated, you have to heat it and take away moisture from that as shown here. Okay. One of the advantages of desiccant cooling as shown here is that if your latent load is high, in that case with conventional system you may have to go like this, right? And this shows reheating. Okay. While in case of desiccant cooling, if you provide cooling along with dehumidification, then you may follow this path on the psychrometric chart, and then the evaporative cooling may take you to the comfort zone. So this is liquid desiccant based cooling system, and in this system, as it was shown in the schematic previously, there are two parts of it. One is the dehumidification column, other is the regeneration column, and in it may be internally cooled, right? Though it's not a very easy idea to implement. Like if you can achieve that, it provides you better performance. So the cooling while you are absorbing the moisture and regenerating done, heating done along with regeneration, that is taking out moisture from the liquid desiccant, right? Then only you can complete the cycle. So the air, when it is exposed to the liquid desiccant, which is cool and it is concentrated, in that case, this is the adiabatic process. If you don't provide any kind of cooling here, right? Actually, there is some generation of heat, so it can go the slope can be even less, right? But if you can very effectively take away heat from here, then it can become isothermal process also, right? But in a small space available here, to remove required amount of heat may be a very difficult task, an engineering challenge. Some advantages of liquid desiccant based system as compared to the solid desiccant, because there is a flexibility in time, you can regenerate and store, and you can also easily pump it. So those are some of the advantages, for possible advantages of liquid desiccant systems as compared to the solid desiccant systems, but they are not yet much seen in the market because of certain issues like corrosion, carryover of the liquid desiccant particle into the space, and the COPs. Finally, at least from the primary energy consumption point of view, the COP should be kind of competitive as compared to the vapor compression based system, and the initial cost also should not be prohibitive. And when you are using these thermally fired systems, the parasitic power consumption, the power consumption of the components like pumps and fans should be very low. So you have to have that kind of adopt that kind of components, fans and pumps, so that the parasitic power consumption is very low. Otherwise, it will your purpose will be defeated. Okay. Other possible options that can be and should be considered for air conditioning, one of them is going for evaporative cooling. Right? Okay. So I believe we have around 15 minutes now, and I will keep my pace accordingly. So a desert cooler is not something which is unknown to us, which uses evaporative cooling. But then the advantage of that kind of cooler, the desert cooler, is that the electrical power consumption for the same amount of sensible cooling, right? Actually, evaporative cooling is you are not reducing the enthalpy. You are just dropping the temperature. So if the incoming air is at required low humidity, then this technology is useful. And for the same amount of sensible cooling, you will be consuming much lower electrical power. That's the advantage of evaporative cooling. And I had earlier done some experiments in my lab, and basically this showed that in the month of March and the earlier part of April, using a desert cooler in Vadodara is a good idea. Provides you the comfort conditions. But then if you go up to end of April and May and not in June, right? You should not be using. You cannot use desert cooler for comfort cooling when the ambient humidity is already high. So it depends upon the weather conditions, the climate, whether to go for evaporative cooling or not to go for evaporative cooling. Okay. So when the ambient is dry and hot or warm at that time, evaporative cooling could be a good choice. But then there is a limitation of evaporative cooling, as it is shown here, that if your ambient is already at a higher humidity ratio, then you have to go on increasing the quantity of air that you handle, and but still then there is a limit to it. Okay, otherwise it will create air drafts, which is already very high in desert coolers. So because in India there is a large portion which remains hot and dry for many months, so there the evaporative cooling is good choice even in the composite climates. For a couple of months at least, the ambient is such that you can go for evaporative cooling. Now, one of the disadvantage of evaporative cooling, now why are we considering these kind of air conditioning systems? Because they are more energy efficient, right? Particularly the electrical power consumption is lower as compared to the compressor based air conditioning systems. Then the indirect evaporative cooling system. Why are we going for indirect evaporative cooling as compared to the evaporative cooling? The reason for that is that here there is indirect heat exchange between the primary air where the evaporation occurs and the air which is going to be utilized for air conditioning purpose. Right. So because of that, you are not humidifying the air that is being supplied into the space. You are just cooling it. But then there is an additional heat exchanger here. So because of that, the initial cost would be higher as compared to the evaporative cooling, as well as there will be more pressure drop. So your blower power will be higher in that case. So this explains how evaporative cooling can help you to cool the air sensibly without without adding the moisture into it, right? And there can be combination of direct and indirect evaporative cooling, and it can give you better comfort conditions as compared to direct evaporative cooling in many cases. And another option is geothermal cooling, that is like if you go a bit deep in the ground, then what you find is that the temperature variation is not very high. So in summer you can cool the media there, and in winter it provides you a bit higher temperature. Right? So it can be used as a sink because the temperature remains the variation is less. You can use it as a sink. Okay. So it provides you, like in summer, the condensing unit of your air conditioning system will have to reject heat at much higher temperature. So your COP or EER will be very low in harsh conditions in summer. But if you are rejecting it a bit deep in the ground, then your heat pump or air conditioner will have a higher energy efficiency. this brings us to the end of the lecture. So if you have questions, I would welcome your questions.
Hello, sir. I am Rahul Paliwal.
Yes.
Can I
Yes, sir.
ask?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Sir, we have one research project 2 years ago about chilled water cooling system.
Okay.
But we face one problem, that how that moisture we can remove.
Which
Due to
moisture?
use of chilled water, moisture formation is there.
Are you talking about radiant cooling?
Yes, radiant cooling, sir. Can we do, how we can improve that system, sir? Where are the problems arising?
No, you said you had a project you worked on.
Simple. We have a simple project. We have done one experiment, but that moisture removal is a problem. So how that that
How
can be
did you?
minimized?
Can you give some idea about how you did this radiant
Means
cooling?
we have recirculated chilled water over that packing material, and through that one fan we have put, and means my question is how that moisture removal can be
right. So moisture removal has to be taken care of separately in a radiant cooling system.
Okay.
Radiant cooling system are generally designed for sensible cooling.
Okay.
As you see from this figure, right?
Yes.
What is shown here? See the different heat exchange processes that are shown. So you will realize that all of them are generally sensible, right? That is, this radiative heat from occupant is going to this, right? Then this from the walls are also being cooled. So these are sensible cooling. Now, how you take care of the latent cooling is that you have to supply the air at a required low humidity level, low value of humidity ratio, right? So the W is already low, so that it takes away moisture from the space and it is exhausted, right? So this separate air that you are supplying is taking care of that. So you cannot have a only radiant cooling system. You have to combine it, this dehumidification.
It means you have to combine the system. Okay.
Right. You have to combine it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Any further queries?
Participants can also use chat box for question and answer.
You can also ask it in the chat box.
Hello.
Yes.
Normally, I've seen in the advertisement that I forget the brand, but they are marketing their product that if the persons are more in the particular room, then that AC will work with the 2-ton capacity, and the persons are less, then it work as a 1-ton AC. Consumptions like that, the 1-ton AC is consuming. Just marketing gimmick.
Yeah. So I believe it should be based on the inverter technology, and inverter technology, as you might be knowing, the speed of the compressor varies so as per the load or the temperatures in the space, right? So like as the temperature reaches the set temperature or moves towards the set temperature, the compressor speed is decreased, and amount of cooling is provided, it keeps on decreasing. And at partial loads, it provides you much higher energy efficiency ratio or COP as compared to the full load conditions, right? when it is running at the full speed. Okay, so there must be a sensor which detects the load, right? And with the help of that, it gives a signal to the compressor whether to run it at a higher speed or at a lower speed.
Okay.
I think that must be the strategy used.
Thank you.
Yeah. So variable running the equipments at variable speed is also an important technology which is utilized for saving of energy. Right, when the demand or requirement is at a lower level, you run the equipment, whether it is compressor or pump or fan, at a lower speed.
Okay.
And, you utilize less electrical power.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I moved a bit fast actually, thinking that I may not be able to complete it, but then I was a bit faster. But I believe I gave you some important highlights while like presenting a given slide. So if you have at that time, if you haven't understood something, or then this is the time you can utilize for asking questions on that. I many times use quizzes in between, but then this time, like I was a bit late in starting my preparations, so I didn't have time to put quiz. And if the audience is there in front, then of course you enjoy it more, but that's not the case here.
So I guess there is no more questions, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So
anybody want to ask anything? Okay, nobody's there.
No, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you all for your patient listening. And there is a very big audience, but I believe the disturbance was minimal. So I thank all of you for that. And
Yes,
also
sir. Yes, on behalf of entire team and participants, I would also like to thank you, Dr. Mehta, for spending your valuable time, and the insights given was really helpful for the participants. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Good day. So can I leave the meeting now?
Participant? Yes, sir. Sure. Sure. Thank you.
I'll stop presenting.
So participants, we are meeting at 1:30 again for Mr. Kamlesh session.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.